is the Product Analytics PM UX Weekly Sync for August 30th. I almost said July. It's August 30th, 2023. We have a couple of things, the standing agenda for the UX team, front-end team, and I wanted to review any questions about upcoming implementation, specifically Dashboard Designer, if that's an issue or an effort that is in the current milestone. Rob, I don't know if you've got anything assigned to you for this one. It looks like Jan and Elwin are taking most of it or have the issues assigned to them so far, but are you looking to pick anything up here? Is there anything I can answer or make more clear in what you've read?
No, as far as I know, the tracking for Dashboard Designer is in the backlog. It's not been allocated to anyone yet, but that's more of a back-end orientated task. The removal of panels, Elwin's picked up. He's just working his way through it. And then we've already had that conversation last week regarding the Dashboard Designer MVC and the direction we were going to take initially.
Yep.
And I know Jan's all over that. So I don't see any other issues. I'm not sure of any, there's other than rolling out the feature flag. I'm not sure if there's any other related issues, at least for this epic, is there?
Alan picked up the issue yesterday, which I should put into this epic for filtering out not product analytics visualizations.
Oh, you mean like Dora and etc., that sort of stuff?
Yeah. I'm gonna add that into, since we did assign it, let's stick it into that milestone.
That should be fairly straightforward though. That's it's not a UI change. That's an engineering filtering change.
Yeah, and that'll be an interesting iteration when we get to dashboards for other areas of the product, where you want to pull in data from, say, error tracking and product analytics or value stream dashboard. How do we start to make a menu of sorts of those without blowing it up into just this huge list that no one can grok and you're paralyzed by choice?
Yes.
That'd be a fun task for the new UX person when they get here.
Yeah, I mean, the most obvious choice is to break it down by feature or group, but then you do that, you're sort of siloing. That's not necessarily what those charts mean. That's just where they're situated.
Yeah.
So that's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, the Dora one specifically is group data, whereas all the product analytics ones are project data today. So there's a natural split there, but then within that, we got to start to figure out what's your job to be done, who are you, what's the right data to present. And we can go down that path later. But yeah, I think starting by splitting group and project is a good way to split it, because otherwise you're going to add a chart that you're never going to get data for potentially.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. I want to go back and talk tracking for Dashboard Designer real quick. You mentioned that's a backend task. The proposal, which is very light that I wrote, says snowplow tracking. Is that something that we can add from the front end? Is there a reason
Yes, yeah, we can. It's just normally the tracking we end up doing is, service ping, snowplow orientated from the backend point of view. Thinking about it, rereading, but I didn't read the issue. Reading it now, saving could be done on the back end through the GraphQL API, but I mean, at the same time, on success, we can easily trigger a snowplow tracking event on the front end too. And when it comes to visiting the Dashboard Designer, most likely that would end up having to be the front end, because that's router, isn't it? View router, which means the backend's not even involved. So yes, that is the front end. I'm actually going to update the label to make that clear. So I'll add the front end label to that.
Cool. And I added a extra bullet for a stretch of users who edit a dashboard, not knowing if that's going to be the same sort of view components there. If we can differentiate between I've created a dashboard versus I've saved an existing dashboard.
Okay, so users who save an existing dashboard. Yep, that's the exact same process essentially. So
Excellent.
we can do both.
Awesome.
In terms of priorities, what would be how soon how soon do we want that done? I guess is what I'm trying to say. With convoluted, I was trying to think in terms of our group milestones with beta, etc.
Yeah. I'm thinking about dashboard designer functionality separate from beta. So we can release the beta and then roll out the dashboard designer. So when we get to it, great. We do have service ping tracking today on new dashboards created. So we have some data already, but we'd love to see a little more real-time snowplow data. How many people are going to and finishing at flow. I think this will be a great one for our first funnel tracking as well, as we start to go through that. How do people get through the flow of the dashboard designer? Where do they fall out?
Is this a case where we could actually use our own product to track our own product?
It is, yeah. I think analytics instrumentation is getting close to having the MR merged for at least page views tracking, because we don't have cookie consent, so we won't get unique users on GitLab.com. So that'll be fun and exciting to probably knock over the cluster repeatedly for a week and a half and then figure out how big it needs to scale up. Awesome. So then reviewing upcoming design issues, speaking of anonymous users or user ID type, that's the one that stuck out, and I think it's assigned to a milestone that I wanted to see if there were any questions there. Jan and I had talked about in a previous call, making those filters eventually the tokenized filters like we have in other big views like jobs and MRs and things like that. But for now, just adding a filter or a checkbox to exclude anonymous, I think gets us where we need to be.
Yeah, I agree. I did add a comment just before the meeting started, whether we could consider using a toggle rather than a checkbox, just because it seems to fit the design parameters better in this scenario, because there's a binary that is always defaulted to one value, and has the added benefit that we auto update the dashboard as soon as you click it. We're not doing any kind of saving or anything like that. So visually, from a user experience perspective, I feel like it makes it easier to parse and slightly larger, so it's not so hidden. Wording would be a bit tricky. I guess it's no different than a checkbox, is it? Never mind. Whatever Lorena decides, I'm happy with.
I think there's been some discussion down in a comment below about the verbiage or the wording. And I think, I updated, I'm going to update the proposal while we're talking. I'm going to share my screen while I do it, so there's something to look at in the recording.
Other than our pretty faces.
Right? Oh, speak for yourself. Toggle text. Exclude anonymous users. And followed by that toggle UX on true. Wait, how would that be? So toggle, I guess it would be yes.
If the terminology is a checkbox that says exclude anonymous users, then by default it'd be off, wouldn't it? Because we're including all users, and then if you want to narrow it down, or is the idea to have it the other way?
Well, the default for the SDK is that you're gonna get, or that you have cookie consent false. So all users would be anonymous.
Yeah.
So if this is toggled yes to default, you're yes excluding. So you're going to show 0 users and 0 page views.
Yeah. So that would be no by default, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we would want no by default, so that you're going to see what design saw of 1 user, 100,000 page views then.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. You wouldn't be able to drill down into the users themselves, but you could see their page views and their other data points.
Yeah, that gets you around the I start instrumenting. I don't do anything with the SDK options. I don't collect a cookie. I have a bunch of data that's going to the cluster, but I don't see any of it in my charts. So instead of troubleshooting, you're going to see one user, lots and lots of page views potentially.
If we want to have the toggle defaulted to on, from a UX perspective, visually, does it make more sense to have that toggle on, or does it make more sense to have that toggle off? Because if we want it on by default, we could just change the text to include anonymous users instead, and have a positive message rather than an exclusory one. This is where I want an actual UX designer to tell me what's the standard.
For the MVC, the exclude, since we already got Lorena to give us a yes on it, and have it off by default,
right,
or no by default. So don't exclude anonymous users, because that's probably the default behavior for somebody who's instrumenting, at least with the browser SDK first. That way they get data, and we have a help or tooltip there.
Yep.
About why they're seeing what they're seeing. I think that's the best case for someone who's new to product analytics, or our version of it.
And it follows the idea of, I guess, progressive disclosure. The user is actively turning this off.
Yeah.
To change what they're seeing. Okay, I can create a quick mock-up of this as well. I mean, it's just a pajamas component, so I can just chuck it on the page.
Sweet.
Get an idea of what it's going to look like if we want before we give the green light to move it into planning breakdown.
Awesome. And then I think Dennis had an ask for someone to create an issue for this cube scope of work for this, which I don't see related. I see a related issue around the future iteration, but nothing for.
Yeah, I'll do that at the same time. I'll take this on.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Cool. And then the last one was asking to get an estimate on the usage quota. I know Dennis pinged everybody earlier this week as well. Thank you for putting it on your to-do list, Rob.
It's been on my to-do list for well over a week now.
All good.
The with fill parameters have taken far longer than I was expecting or wanting it to. So, but yes, it's my next high priority item. Normally, when I meet with Dennis every week, we go through my items and just make sure they're all aligned. He's not feeling too great today, so we'll be doing that tomorrow instead, so he can take it easy. I'll see if that adjusts, if you'd like me to pivot away from what I'm doing now to focus on this, but if not, it is the next item that I'm going to be hitting before the end of the week.
Cool. So my preference would be finish up what you're working on for the existing milestone, the commitments we've made. Future scoping work can always be second fiddle to that, or second priority to that.
And if anyone's watching this and wants to take this on, and I haven't started, or even if I have, feel free to.
Excellent.
Short toast and all that.
I'll link to what we're talking about in the notes below the video too.
Bro.
Awesome. Well, we're at the end of the agenda. Thank you, Rob.
That's all right. I don't think we're quite light on design stuff for now. We'll see how we go.
Awesome. All right, well, have a great rest of your day.
And you.
Cheers.
Ciao.